CC. Well, I'll say it again. It is 5:02, and we're going to call this meeting of the CCLR committee to order. Members, Jim was kind enough to share with folks in the meeting invitation the agenda for this meeting. I'm also going to just ask her to share her screen so that we can stay on task. We don't have, it's not a lot of items, but they are meaty items. And so I'm happy for us to go ahead and jump in so folks can enjoy the rest of their day. And so I'll give Jen a minute to share her screen. And Brandon, I don't know if you heard, but we do have Haley with us, and she will eventually transition to be our new staffer for this committee.
Cool, sounds good, thanks.
All right, so the first item on our agenda, we have essentially, excuse me, let me back up. We have three items on our agenda. First is work planning. Second is talking about the recruitment and selection for the task force. And third is the workflow and ongoing status updates around education as a civil right. I expect the bulk of the meeting to be about the first two items, really the first item. And so happy to jump in. I also share, and I'm going to lean on Jen a bit to back me up here, but I shared with folks kind of some initial thinking around activities the committee can take as we are working on a work plan for the reimagining the high school graduation requirements. This builds on the goals that we share as committee members for the task force. And these activities could possibly span the committee as well as the task force, and might be some things that are at the board level, like panels and other things. I did my best to just kind of offer up thinking that people can respond to, like tell me what's good, what's bad, what's great, what's crazy, what's ridiculous. But I do want us to start to talk through and slate some activities and timing so we have a sense of our work. What Jen also is doing for us as staff is to put into, as we make decisions, she will put them into the final work plan template, which I'll also just have her take a quick look at, to have her pull up to show folks so we can get a sense of what that looks like. The work plan template we will share with the full board will not only have the activities, the status of each activity, start and end dates, but it will also have considerations like who is responsible or who is the owner. So it'll say like the task force is, and this is nothing I'm committing us to, but I'm just giving examples. The task force will lead, I don't know, focus groups with different stakeholders. And the last consideration that we'll also list are like if there are certain resources that we need, whether it be staff time, whether it be something that has an expense, because we are, beginning to move into a new fiscal year, and some of this work does require resources. So I will stop for a moment, ask if folks have any questions about the template before moving on.
And I wanted to show the members, you can see just the current, this is like the blank, basically, work plan, our standard template that we use. What Representative Thompson was describing, I'm imagining, I have this old timeline that I created for the Healthy School Facilities launch event, that it would be closer to this, more of like a Gantt chart with all of these things that she just described. So based on your discussion and the decisions you all make, I will turn it into something more like this.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take the silence as no questions about it. Do folks have any, and Representative Henderson, did I miss anything in that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I
And
think
so
one
go,
question I do have though is the task force work plan will be integrated into this work plan. Is that correct? Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what we had discussed. Now, it will probably be helpful to pull out like a one pager or something just for task force members, so they can see. And I would imagine that folks might have ideas or input at the task force level, but we do want to start somewhere. But this is the overall for all the work. So think task force, think committee, and think things we would want to raise and when we want to raise things to the larger board. Any other thoughts or questions? Because that was a helpful one. Okay. Happy to move on to the actual content of it. Do folks have any initial thoughts? Happy to start from a place of, because I don't want to be redundant, of just kind of walking through some of what was sent around. If it's helpful to give a bit of a, because I know people, what's helpful to people is different. So happy to give a bit of a voiceover first, if that's most helpful, or if folks just want to jump in, I'm happy to do that as well.
And they moved it into this document so that I could document what you all decide.
That's amazing, Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Can we do the initial voiceover? And so that way we can just all also too, like just for the public record as well.
Yeah, so on the screen is some initial thoughts around activities we can take to get us to a place of not just engagement, but also learning for board members and synthesizing recommendations and communicating with OSSI around the high school graduation requirement update. I will flag a few things up front. One is there's an assumption built into here that the timeline is not December, that it could actually be closer to February, which I think should be discussed. I know OSSI has said they do not feel strongly that it has to be a December vote. One of the reasons, and when we started, and this is why I think it's really important to slot in activities, this also assumes a bit of an iterative process, one in which there is a point that we do a first round of engagement where we're saying, hey, this is what OSSI has provided us, and what do folks think about that, hearing their feedback, and then essentially coming back out and saying, hey, giving some time for folks to know what our draft recommendations are once changes have been made, which is why it is a little bit of a longer timeline, because I know one of the things that I consistently hear, it doesn't matter what the subject matter is that folks will say, I believe the decision's already been made. I don't think it matters if I show up and say something. Or there are a lot of folks who don't have a response until something is created. And so we want to involve folks in the evolution of the changes. And so it does have kind of a two-phase engagement process where we are able as a board to say, here's what we have, here's what we know, tell us what you think, and incorporate changes, and then come back and essentially say, did we hear you correctly? Did we miss anything? Is there anything else? Kind of like like you would have a conversation with a person. We're having a conversation with the public. The third thing I will call out here is there is an assumption built in, and there's time built in as far as a need to not just say to folks like, hey, this is why this is important, or hey, we want you to participate. But there's a desire to bring some of the stakeholders along in this conversation, like labor, like employers, like university partners, because if we are making substantive changes to our diploma, we want that to mean something to them at the end of the day. So if, for example, when OSSI talks about the endorsements, if we settle on saying like, hey, these endorsements mean that someone is, I don't know, fluent in multiple languages when they meet, we want the folks who would then be looking at those diplomas to know what we mean by that, because it's great. Like, what makes a diploma different from any other sheet of paper? with words on it. It has a certain significance and meaning to it. So there is some like messaging built into this, some messaging activities built into this, which we would which are both targeted to the general public for engagement, but also are targeted for like understanding around like just why this work is important. So folks will say, all right, look, DC diplomas mean this, and this is why this is important for everybody. So those are the 3 things that I would call out immediately. I do want to separate those from the policy goals that the committee has, because the policy goals have not shifted. If I had to name the policy goals, which are also listed like on the task force, all of this is aligned. Our policy goals for the high school graduation work are as follows. 1 is to create broader and multiple paths to graduation. So that would include things like, what does it look like to integrate more CTE and vocational? What does it look like to have more pathways for SPED students to graduation? 2, and 3rd, I think Alistair has brought this up, like the space for things like advanced coursework that might not fall into either one of those buckets, right? So that is a policy goal. Those are like the 3 big things that we would say are like the requirements, work policy goals. I'm naming like engagement work plan goals. This is separated into a couple of different phases. So phase 1 will be the phase we're in now, which is like when there's like some homework being done by board members and staff. So for example, we've had, I think that was October of last year. Standing disclaimer that my sense of time is not great. We had a panel where we had experts from around the country come talk to us about multiple pathways to graduation and what that could look like. We also had, folks talk to us about SPED diploma pathways. All of that information we've already collected would be part of like just a literature review, things that folks should know, both to brief us as members and the task force. We would also just hold some kind of conversations with partners where we're saying like, hey, this is the work we want to do, both for them to hopefully participate in the task force, but also to bring them in as like engagement partners for the rest of the work. And we would start to launch alongside the task force and with the task force, like some citywide engagement. I'm not good at naming this, so please rename anything, because that is not my strength, but I tried. So like we could do something that's more like stories behind the stats. So where it's like, if we're talking about students who have special needs, it would be great to hear from a student, like we've had 2 now in a row at Rivers Harris who have gone back and got their GED, but could have got a diploma the first time around, right? And like what that meant for their lifetime trajectory and why that was important to them. Those kind of stories that kind of help people understand like the why this is important and get them encouraged and excited to participate. Phase 2 would be, and I'm kind of phasing them as, and I didn't list launch of task force here, but of course we have to do, we should add that, Jen, as a bullet, like the launch of the task force. I feel like that's implied, but that would be July through September in the phase 1. Phase 2, once we have the task force in place, we will start to do some public panel sessions. So I think thinking about which topics before the board we still want to explore. Maybe we want to have one on, I don't know, CTE and what that looks like across. Maybe we want to have a student-led panel with some like recent graduates. But what are the topics before the board so that we're also helping to bring the other members in the public along, in addition to starting to do the engagement or with community surveys, school-based engagements, focus groups. I am envisioning that in collaboration with the task force members. One of the big reasons we are having a task force is not just for them to educate us with their individual perspectives, but to be able to tap into the different like communities and connections that they represent, and for us to have more just like ambassadors for the work in general. And so I'm envisioning this as like part of the task force work. We would also might want to do some partner-led engagements we've had in the past where we have had like citywide engagements, and maybe we partner if we want to specifically talk about just giving ideas, but like if we wanted to do a parent one, and it's done with like PAVE and AJE and a couple others, right? So a couple of like literally meetings that say, what are you thinking? And again, I'm seeing that as in partnership with the task force. And then I'm also suggesting that we tap into not just only our SAC, but do some youth-led work about like their experience with the current high school graduation experience, and what it means to them. All of that is phase 2 in engagement. Phase 3, we would essentially say, hey, here's what we heard from you. And I'm sorry, I should probably say the engagement that is happening in phase 2 is based on what OSSI has shared with us so far. Phase 3, we would then say, okay, let's synthesize what we heard, what people either like agree with, what they don't, what they want to see different, whatever it is. And we would say, okay, here is OSSI and the public, like, here's our interim, like what we've heard from folks. We will hope to make some updates, come back out in phase 4 to the public and essentially say, hey, did we get this right? Is there anything else? I would recommend that we would do a second set of like hearing from young people, hearing from other stakeholders. We will probably, we would still maybe have like a final panel or whatever, to help people get ready for the vote. And then phase 5 is for us to say, okay, we've heard everything possible. Here's what the final is. We would share it with OSSI, or however that process is going to work with us. And then we will be able to vote on final graduation requirements. So I hope that is helpful as far as like the flow of work and the thoughts here. Please give me thoughts and response.
Like it. And also it's like it's a big city, so I don't mind leading like if you want to like focus like specifically like on sped and like one of us is maybe doing like vocational, you know what I mean? And like one of us, you know what I mean? And like we like spread it out and then like we do some together and then continue, to kind of spread out those different community engagement rounds. I do have a clarifying question. So just with the community engagement, are we doing this in conjunction like with the task force? Like, are we taking task force members like with us as we do these engagements, or is this just us as like the state board doing this? Because I was just, I'm wondering like if we do take some of the task force members on the listening sessions, I'm wondering how they would also process what people are saying and maybe they can also give us feedback in real time. I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
So I think it's, I'm going to answer that question in 2 parts. The first part is part of the discussion we're going to have today is like who is assigned what, right? And like how are we doing the work? I am suggesting that the task force be a big part of the engagement. And so I'm not saying that we would just hand it over to them and say like, good luck, right? Like I do think we would have like the staff support, but we would also have members participate. And we would look for input from task force members as far as things like, hey, are there things that we should cover in this? Like, what are some of the things that we should take out to the public? Help us tap into some of the communities you might be a part of, right? If you want to facilitate, lead a session, like those kinds of things. So they would hear alongside us. I would also hope that other members of the board who are not on this committee would like want to attend and promote engagements, whether in their own ward or whether, other parts of the city. We have not yet, of course, like designed what the engagements look like. And I will say Jen kind of repackaged this just to make it a little bit more palatable. But if you have some time, take a look at the email I sent yesterday, because there are a lot of options for types of activities. This kind of does a really good job of distilling the like the thought process and like where are we, like what is our timeline, what are we doing when overall. But it has not been decided, and it is up to us as a committee to decide, like, do we want to do a survey, do we want to do focus groups, do we want to do, you know what I mean, like all of that is up to us together. But I wanted to start to put something to give people something to respond to, not to say like it's got to be this, if that makes sense. But I want to keep us, you know, conversing, because it's also helpful if I put something out there and people are like, you know what, I absolutely hate this, but it makes me think of this, right? Like it is a shared decision.
Thank you.
So a few things that I was unsure of, you spoke to in your narration, but just to underscore, in the phase one, I want to make sure that we do start with the things that we've already done. So in addition to the panels that you mentioned, Kathleen put together the one pagers that
Yeah.
summarize a lot of the things that people will be interested in, and also has a state comparison spreadsheet. So I think that's another thing that people will be curious about. Well, like how does this decision compare to what other states are doing? And then I think it would be great if we were able to do this, to incorporate in that phase um, a review of Aussie's engagement feedback. I don't know if
Yes.
they were planning to share with us, you know, what they have done, because they've already talked to a lot of the groups that we are going to want to talk to and come circle back to with the, well, you met with Aussie. Here's what Aussie came back with. Now, what do you think? So it'll be helpful to know that background, I think. And then just a note on the, like, I think the, you know, collecting community experience is, would be very helpful. And I think it's implied, but you're also talking about telling those stories, right? Like
Yes.
not only collecting the stories, but sharing those out, which I'm sure that Andrew, you know, would be happy to help with. Well, I shouldn't promise what he would think. I imagine he would be, though.
I would also imagine, yes.
Yeah. And I think everyone probably understands this, but I think it's worth saying out loud too, that like a lot of this will have to be responsive to like what we're getting from Aussie. So like I think this makes sense as a timeline. It does sort of assume that we are going to like get the proposal in August or September, which, as far as I know, we're still expecting that. And then with keeping that flexibility in mind, just being strategic about who does what work, and like I think when you're talking about like getting the full board ready for a vote, so like just kind of as we go and we see like these are the sticking points or the points of you know, differing opinions, maybe those are the things that we need to elevate to the full board so that they're as, you know, as engaged as possible on those issues, as well as the task force. And it wasn't immediately clear just from the what you'd written out, but again, you said this, that like the engagement is that we're taking the Aussie proposal back to the public, and so that, you know, prevents the, you know, the concern that Aussie and others have raised before of it being duplicative. It's not, because we've got something new to bring to them. And I did look at the kinds of potential ways of doing engagement, and I think I was especially excited about some of the visits, like proposing visits to ATC, to River Terrace, places like that. And like, I don't think any of them are bad ideas. Like they would all be useful. It'll just be a matter of kind of managing our capacity and prioritizing based on, I think based on what, again, like what are the issues that are really
Mhm.
kind of live issues for us, based on what gets proposed.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a yes to all of those things, and I appreciate you raising where like things were not explicit, right? Because I'm hoping that as we have this conversation, we start to make things more explicit. I am also, and this is in we are aligned in the assumption, and Jen put in the chat that it is still true that Aussie's planning to attend the next session talking about graduation requirements. And what I have, everything I've heard, and I don't know if there's anything different. I would love to hear if somebody heard something different, but is that they are starting to wrap up their phase of engagement, which would imply that they would say, okay, here's the latest and greatest. I do think it's really important for us to build on what they've heard, but also to not just, I think it's important for us to broaden and to deepen. So we should not assume that Aussie has talked to everybody, because I know a lot of folks, you know, don't even know this is happening. And we want as many folks to know this work is happening as possible. But also just to like the check to say, okay, well, I would expect some changes from the last proposal we saw. And so we can hear from folks to say, okay, here's what I said, or here's what I still want, or whatever it is. And so it is to build on what Aussie has put in front of us. I do think we will need to prioritize, and maybe some of the prioritization will come kind of like as we start to slot things in, or as we start to like, or once we hear back from Aussie, or like, I don't think it has to be like a static document. I think we can make some changes, but I am recommending that certain things we do just to gather information, like to your point, Representative Henderson, about you know, there's some work that's really good work that's already been done by Kathleen. We've had some really good expert witnesses and panels, but also we should know what work is already happening in DC. So like a lot of folks don't know the ATC even exists, who are big champions of career and technical education. And so we should know what's happening in the ATC, how it's being offered, who's taking advantage of it, what that experience is like. What is, since none of the students at River Terrace graduate with a diploma, and we're having a conversation about expanding diploma access, and the principal has said that she would participate because this is something that's very near and dear to her heart. It would be good to go and see like what that instruction looks like, but also the fact that they have Project Search, which is like the workforce program, like seeing what that looks like to be able to familiarize ourselves with what the district already has, so that we know what we're starting from, I think is particularly important. And so if there are other, I would also encourage members to say like, hey, this is happening already, that's like really great and we should keep, because a lot of times we talk about like what we want to be new, and we don't always protect good work that is happening or build on good work that is happening. And I know that, you know, you all know amazing things about this city. And so please also like lift those things up to make sure, you know, we're making things better, not just changing things.
And then just one thing I added from my perspective when I was meeting with Representative Thompson was like, as what you mentioned about capacity, and as the more you can weave these into the on task force meetings and committee work, as well as, you know, maybe one of these panels could be during a committee meeting, or if the larger board is interested in it, it could be at a public meeting. You know, inviting some of these experts to speak to the task force or the committee, like the more you can weave it into the ongoing work, especially with the policy team and the work that we're already doing, I think that would be the best way to get it done in the best way as well. And the things that involve external folks and other agencies just always require additional time. So I would encourage the committee to, like, when planning out this timeline and priorities, think about that as well.
I'm leaving space to see if there are any more thoughts, because I know not everybody's on camera. If there aren't, and the best next step is to take and like sit down, and Jen and I can start to slot in some of the things into the actual template together. We can do that. Or if folks want to do some of that now, that is an option too. What is the will of the group?
I mean, I think at the at least if we could agree on like the phase level, you know, maybe not the breakdowns underneath, but I think the phase level makes sense in terms of categorizing the type of work we're doing at each stage. So like
Okay.
I'm voting in favor of like the way it's mapped out, at least in terms of the phases.
The framework.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
so like an engagement round, us, you know, taking that engagement and drafting our, I guess I might call those like our revisions, or like revision recommendations.
Yes.
Just to make clear that we're not like starting from scratch and having our own competing recommendations, and then to iterate and re-engage. I think that's good.
Okay.
I'm less sure about like when to slot in like say panels or things like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
I like that. And also too, this document can be fluid as we also get, you know, go back and forth with OSSI as they also give us updated information. But I do like the phases, the framework of the phases.
I saw Brandon put in the chat, looks good to me. I'm gonna assume that's in reference to the framework of the phases.
Yes.
He wrote that a lot earlier too.
But I also would second what Representative Henderson just said as well.
Okay. Okay. So we have agreed that this is the framework. The next step would be to then take these phases and this framework to actually slide it into the work plan template that Jen showed us initially.
Do we have to take like procedurally, do we have to take a vote to do that? Or no? No? Okay.
No, we typically vote if we need to like vote something like out of committee. Like this is just us doing our work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just, you know, talking about how we're gonna get the work done.
Got it.
So the next step would be to like, we need to translate it into that work plan document. I guess my question would be, is it more efficient and do folks process better if we take the activities and the different things, like, because I don't mind taking a first stab at like dropping the stuff in, Jen and I dropping the stuff into the document, and then folks want to respond back based on these phases. And because it could be and or, do folks have some initial thoughts about like particular activities that are like, I love this, I hate this, let's never do this, right? And want to kind of have some, Brandon says drop and respond. But like, are there any initial, and if it's helpful, I can stop talking for a moment so folks can just go to the email and take a quick glance. But if there's anything that people have like really strong feelings about that would shape the drop and respond, that would be helpful to know. And so I'll give like I guess, 3 minutes for folks to just digest and think about that before we move on. While you are thinking, thing I did not voice over in this conversation, but I did preface in the email. I did share this with Jen to ask her to think about like staffing considerations and capacity considerations too. So that filter can be added as well, because like, for example, Robert reference is kind of implied that there will be work for Andrew to do as a staff member. If we're collecting stories and sharing our stories along the way. And so that's one of the reasons it kind of went to Jen first. And it's like, okay, can we do any of these things? Like we have the capability to do all of these things. We might not have the capacity to do all of these things at once or all of these things during the timeline. So we should prioritize, but these are all possible activities we can undertake. So I just want to give that background as well.
I like the initial thought of like the yes and like dropping it in, but also saying like, okay, do people like this or do people not like this? So I think we can do both, because if we're in the document reviewing it, then people can also, you know, give their thoughts.
So that sounds like there aren't any immediate things that folks are like, don't put this in there. It sounds like the yes and is go ahead and start putting stuff in. We can do some editing over SharePoint. Is that right?
That's what I'm suggesting, but I also want other members to weigh in.
Well, I heard Brandon has weighed in and said drop and respond.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with drop and respond, but I'm also gonna throw out the things that I like the most, and those are the visits that you listed, and I really like the questions of the community testimony collection, whether that's a you have that in the frame of like collecting stories and sharing stories, and that's fine, but I think those are also good questions for other kinds of like any kind of engagement that we do with those are more towards people who have already graduated. Any kind of engagement we do with people who have already been to high school, I really like those questions. And then I like the idea of school-based engagement visits as well.
Okay. That's helpful. So yeah, if there are particular things that folks are like, I really like this, or like this is my most favorite thing, this is my least favorite thing, that's helpful too. Because then I can, when I'm dropping in, I can take people's priorities into consideration. So I will not, if that is all of the immediate feedback, I will not belabor this further. I will ask that if there are other, today's Wednesday, if by, I would say the end of the week, if folks could let me know, like if there are things that are like priorities for them, kind of like Robert just listed, said like, the school visits or something I really want to see, that's really good. That way, if we have to do any editing on this, we can kind of, Jen and I can incorporate that in like the first draft. And then Jen, would it be fair to say, sorry, I'm pulling up. I try to speak from my calendar. Would it be fair to say, I know the 4th of July is coming up. When is our working session on the 3rd?
It's on the 2nd.
It's on the 2nd this year.
A week from today.
A week from today. So Jen and I will take a stab and get something back to folks on Tuesday, so that we have something to share out. So maybe I need to move that up. could people, by the end of the day tomorrow, if there are any priorities, let us know so we can fix it. And then by Monday, we can get you all something back. And that way, if there are any changes, we can change it. Because we do want to at least say to the rest of the board, like, hey, here's what our work plan looks like. So folks, if they have other thoughts, we can start to incorporate those as well. Not final, but just kind of keeping them, in the conversation, because the idea is for their learning and engagement too. Does that sound fair and reasonable?
That sounds fair. And for the committee, do we have like a working session for us as a committee in July? Because I know we don't have a public meeting, but do the committees still
That's
go?
typically when the state board takes off for no public meetings in the summer. The ad hoc committees also do not meet. But I mean,
Okay.
you all can continue your work in other ways.
Yeah, we can, there's ways for us to do work. It's just typically so that the staff can take their vacation time and stuff. And then also, since we're starting to get into that phase where the move is happening, July is a particularly busy time. But we do need to do some work around which we're about to get into, like the application and the recruitment and all the things. And so it is time slated that everybody doesn't have to meet, but if we need to do, we can talk about that at the end of this meeting. If there's something we need to do, we can do it.
Okay, because I was thinking about, I guess, the June 30th date, because that's the end date, right, for applications.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, so the other part of our work plan is we've kind of had a conversation as a board, and then we actually heard this echoed in public testimony when the young man came to us and said, hey, SEL is important to me too, but I don't see it happening in my schools. What does some of the follow-up around the things that we have passed and implemented look like? So that could be SEL, it could be financial literacy standards, it could be the literacy recommendations, what Representative Henderson and I connected around is once we slot in the work around the high school graduation requirements, because that is our priority, but it's also a big lift. This work has a lot of parts. It's got the task force, it's got community engagement, we got policy analysis, we got a lot going on. We also want to then take some time to say, all right, based on where we might have, let's say, a committee meeting, I'm going to just make up stuff because it's the best way I know how to make it clear. If in November on our agenda, there's nothing for us to necessarily discuss in the committee around high school graduation requirements, or we have space, maybe that's the time for us to get an update on what's happening with SEL. We also might want to consider things like visiting and talking with OSSI, the deputy mayors, whether it's whoever we need to coordinate, whether it's the Charter Alliance, DCPS, OSSI, and saying hey, in November, we want to check in on financial literacy. Can you recommend a school or two that we can visit? So we can both get the update of hey, here's what's happening, whether it's being here's how it's being rolled out, here's the supports teachers are getting, here's what we expect, and then we can actually go see what it looks like. But we are recommending that is once we slot out our statutorily required, we got to get this done work, that we put that in the spaces where there is space, just to be mindful of capacity. And so that, there might be stops and starts to that, but that's how we're thinking about it. I want to get a reaction from folks to see if that aligns, if that starts to feel the need, but also makes sense to people. I see a thumbs up. That works for me. I'm looking at the chat.
Representative Johnson Law and I got a taste of this. We were speaking at McKinley and heard from a social studies teacher who's kind of asking about that absence of a feedback loop. And so it's definitely needed. And I think as we can fill it in, and this might be too complicated, but maybe it's a, you know, if we're doing a school engagement, maybe we could double dip and like, you know, when we're at a school, also just kind of like meet up with the SEL folks or the social studies folks.
Can I repeat back what I think I heard? So like, for example, if we went to visit a school for high school graduation requirements, or we're doing a school engagement, right? And we could also like talk to the social studies teachers or what, like that would be an efficient use of member time. Is that right?
That's what I'm suggesting. Maybe
Okay.
that's completely wrong and that's too much to do in one visit, but that was my thought, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard the thought right. Because we haven't done this before. And so we can, you know, try and we can have our own feedback loop as a committee around like what was helpful for our learning. Hopefully just also share out to the rest of the board that this is something we're going to do and is an opportunity. It would be great too if folks have recommendations, like if they, because there are things that are already happening, and so like I know I have some schools who are already teaching financial literacy, so like when I talk with Aussie, they're like, oh yeah, they're good. Like if you know of things or have like, you know, we all represent communities, that kind of feedback is helpful too. So we'll slot that in, and I don't know, I feel like we're promising a lot, but hopefully it'll be in this iteration that we're teeing up for the working session. If not, we'll add it in later, but we can at least preview for the rest of the members that this is how we're going to approach it, and invite them to start thinking about this as well. So that is everything as far as work plan planning in that first bucket of things. Before we move on to the second agenda item, I just want to ask, is there anything else that needs to be covered or that I missed? That was the meatiest of the items. So this is not in thirds, if you will, equal thirds. So I will take that as a yes, and I will move on to the second. So Representative Johnson-Law, this gets to your question about the June 30 deadline. So coming back to the high school graduation requirements task force, we want to just do a quick touch base around applications and recruitment, a high level overview of the application pool as of today, and then talk about additional outreach needed, and how we're going to make some of the decisions around who is on the task force. I actually am not best suited, so I don't know if Jen or Robert wanted to jump in and just say like what we have so far.
I can do that just because I know Representative Henderson as well he's been keeping an eye on the numbers, but since we talked about keeping the anonymity of the applicants, I can just give a brief overview. So as of right now, there are 22 applications. This is not including, I know the committee has talked about saving some slots for certain organizations or people that you would like to seat on the task force. So these are just like people who completed the application. It is primarily school-based LEA staff, with a few parents and community members sprinkled in as well as some of those policy experts. Again, not giving too much away, but you would not be surprised by who these folks are.
Yes.
So that is the general spread of the current pool.
Okay.
So Jen, sorry.
Go
Jen,
ahead.
would you say that like employer and workforce side of things is still underrepresented in our applicants?
Yes, and I don't think I saw any recent graduates as well, so may want to lean into, you know, even though their terms just ended, our student reps and some of those colleagues are some of their students that either serve on the SAC or have shown interest, those communities as well.
Also, we might want to look at the adult public charter schools. Like I know like there's some recent graduates there, but also there is a population where like they weren't successful at first and now they're trying to go back to be able, to get their diploma or their, their GED. So that might be an idea too. And I can, since we're divvying out work, I'll reach out to, I'm thinking of maybe CC Prep and Academy of Hope and really reach out to those folks.
Yeah, thanks. I know you did an outreach, and I think that was helpful in generating some additional
Oh, good.
applicants. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you can continue to just target folks, I've done a little bit of that, and we've got about a week left, so
Yeah,
now's the time.
I'll continue.
Yeah, thank you.
No, yeah, of course. I wanted to really uplift it. I was like, wait, that deadline is coming and we got to get people on there. Especially, I would love to have folks east of the river as well. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm pausing for a moment because I'm going back to pull up so we've sent a couple of things to the committee that I think are helpful because I think we've done some good thinking as a group around like who we want on this. When I think there are some assumptions that I would say I know I had, and we checked in about the direct outreach. And this is why it's always not good to assume. So when Andrew came to our meeting to talk to us about the outreach, the staff did do a round of outreach to like the education councils and some of the other folks that we typically talk to. What did not happen, and I think is really valuable for us to make happen and divvy up is as we have had correspondence about the different types of perspectives we want to see on the committee. So like labor, business, higher ed. And we talked about different groups we could and should reach out to. That outreach needs to happen in a more direct way. So I know yesterday, I think that was not, I know, still since the time trash, which is why I calendar everything. But I think Representative Henderson sent an email to like the Workforce Investment Council. I reached out directly to DC AFL-CIO, and they're going to appoint someone to the task force to say, hey, because they're like labor has like apprenticeships and those kind of things. We do have, I would say, as a board, relationships with like Trinity and some of the others. And so I think looking back at that list of organizations, and if committee members can kind of flag if there are folks they have relationships with that they would want to reach out to directly and say like, hey, like I reached out to Sam directly. I was like, hey, labor, we need, this perspective, right? And so if it's helpful, we can pull that up now just to kind of give folks a refresher. I can put in the chat if I copy and paste on my email. But if we could start to divvy that up in addition to probably like a round of emails from like either us as co-chairs or the staff would be really helpful. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
no, I'm saying, would UDC workforce be helpful as well? Because I know Dr. Lee at the UDC workforce location here in Ward 8. Would that be helpful for like the workforce part of it? And he also has connections with a lot of different employers as they're, trying to get certifications in different fields there as well.
Yes,
So I'll reach out.
yes, that would be helpful. So I'm gonna go back into my email so that I'm speaking from a place of what has been shared. Give me one
I'll
second.
add that Jen reached out to like past panelists as well that were relevant for this.
Okay. So we said, and I'm just gonna, easiest thing for me to do is copy and paste and put it in the chat. So I'm gonna do that. Give me 1 second. Thank you. DOES was on the list. So this might be a little bit sloppy, but because it went to chat. But like so OSSI has said that they are going to have someone who's going to sit in with us. We need some LEA representatives, so we need to follow up with DCPS and the Charter Alliance, and we need to follow up with DME. We did also want to reach out to groups like the SAC already knows, some of them have put in applications. I want to say like Black Swan was on the list that Andrew reached out to, MICFA was. I do not think we have contacted like YMCA Youth and Government directly, but we might want to ask like Representative Ting to do an outreach there. I think some of those groups can also be helpful in getting us recent graduates, in addition to some of our LEAs that keep in touch with like college graduates and others. Trinity was on the list when we talk about higher education representatives. They've been on past panels, as well as UDC, HU, GW in Georgetown. It's like places we can reach out to. I would say I'm particularly interested in Trinity since they have the highest number of folks who come from DCPS, who they are educating, DC schools, I should say, I'm sorry. We did reach out to PAVE and the ed councils already. They did get direct outreach, but it's always worth, pinging folks more than once. Thank you for the outreach to DOES, but I would agree with Representative Johnson-Law that reaching out to UDC's workforce also makes a lot of sense here. We have reached out to, and we're going to get folks from AFL-CIO. We've also reached out to the Workforce Investment Council. I'm happy to reach back out to the Greater Washington Partnership, but I also think we should reach out to like the chambers and Federal City Council just to let them know that this is work we're doing and to see if there are business folks who would be interested in participating in this, or maybe staff for those groups. So if you...
Oh, Representative Thompson, I'm sorry. No, do you want me to send it to Melissa at the Federal City Council?
You can.
I'll send it to her. Okay. I'll put that on my list to do.
Yeah, so it's really helpful if as folks, and it might be easier because I know Jen does her best to take notes. If you see on this list, either organizations or people we need to add, or you want to take a group and say, I'm going to reach out to them. If you could just put it in the chat, that's helpful. And so that'll help, make our notes true to form. And so like, I'll do the same. So I have some folks I got to reach back out to. But yeah, so this is what we initially decided. I would say also please, this is a good time to say, if there are others that aren't on this, like how you just said, hey, thinking about UDC workforce, that would be great. If there are other value add perspectives, that's great. We have had some correspondence with like AGE, because they've been panelists, as well as like the policy center folks. So it's like some of the what I would call usual suspects from an education strictly perspective, we do have covered, but it is getting that more like those more robust perspectives that we also need to do some targeted that we also need to do some targeted outreach around. And so please just take a moment to look at this. If there are folks that like this was just like what we started with. This is not a finishing point. One of the things I want us to make a decision around and make explicit is that initially we talked about reviewing the applications for like the community seats. Are we also, because my guess is we might not be, because some of these folks are probably not going to complete the application. But like I would assume that like OSSI is not completing an application to be on the task force. Or we would not ask like the UDC workforce person complete an application. We would say, hey, can you send us someone? We have a seat for this perspective. But I want to ask to make sure that we are all aligned in that as decision making, because it also affects how many applications we have to review. So I want to open that up for thoughts and feedback.
Yeah, I
Dr.
was kind of like
sorry.
not counting Aussie at all. Like, I'm not really counting Aussie as a number towards the 20. Is that your thought too, or like?
So what when we met with Superintendent Mitchell, what she said was she was going to assign someone to sit in so that they could share both like what has been like be a voice for like what has been collected, what they've learned, that kind of thing. But we don't need to like ask Aussie to like have somebody submit an application. And maybe Aussie was not the best example, but for some of these other like specific groups, I would imagine we are not counting them in the community applications. We're saying send us someone because this is a specific perspective that we need. But I'm also asking, is that right? Because we discussed like the community applications, and I just want to make sure as we're doing the outreach, we're all telling people the same thing.
Yeah, to this point I've been saying submit an application, like inviting people to submit an application. But I see the advantage in just saying send a person.
Do we
but
want
if-
to have like a template? Oh, sorry, Representative Henderson.
Just gonna say if everybody on this list sent a person, that would be our 20, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Me either.
I was gonna say, do we need like a template email just to send the folks? That way we can just take it, copy paste it, just send it to them. And maybe if we have like their number to be like, hey, I sent you an email. It's about the task force, check it out. Or something like that. Or I was just trying to make it easier for outreach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less so that yes, we should, it would be good to use the same email, I think, with some room for personalization. But I think I'm more directly asking, are we asking these folks to fill out the application? Because that's not necessarily, like, when we created the application, we created it for like, to get more voices from community. You see what I'm saying? And so
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so I don't think they should be,
I would
shouldn't be
imagine
filling
that
that
I would
out.
not, right. I would imagine I would not say to the head of the Chamber of Commerce, apply to be on our high school graduation task force. I would say, send me somebody, right? Like, is there somebody, right? But
it's
I
just a
want to make sure
representation
that,
to have to make sure that they're included, to uplift maybe some things that we're not sure of. Like, again, like the Charter Alliance. So we're ensuring that, okay, like this affects charters. How's this going to affect them? DCPS, how does this affect these? You know what I mean? It's like the boundary study. Like the different LEAs or different like groups that the DME selected, they were selected by the DMA and put on there for perspective, but they didn't fill out an application to be on the task force. So I think, no offense, we should like volunteer.
yeah, I mean, no offense taken. I think that's exactly directly both what I am asking that we are on the same page about and suggesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So is it helpful to send back? And I mean, I know, like I saw the email that Robert sent. I think that was a good one. We would just strike the language like apply for or whatever. But like, I think we already have, because we've already done some direct outreach. So it's not a huge lift to just make sure everybody on the committee has it. And then if we could just kind of keep each other in the loop so that we know, because sometimes it's good to bug somebody more than once, but just so we can kind of track, like if somebody hasn't been touched, has been touched, or has been touched 3 times, that would be helpful. And then if anyone is not taken, I will make sure I get a contact from them and I will take them. Because I do.
And let's do it tomorrow.
Yes. Absolutely. Maybe some tonight. I think the thing due to weather I have might be canceled. So Yeah.
Yeah, and if there are more left over that, like, you can assign me more.
Okay. Brandon, I know you are on mute, but if you heard me about like anybody you want to reach out to directly, if you could put that in the chat, that would be awesome. But I think we have a plan for this as far as the outreach part of it. So we've covered who's applied so far, where we have to go for outreach. I actually probably should be coming back to maybe Jen and Representative Henderson about like how we want to make some decisions for the, like you all have started to
Yeah.
rubric.
So we talked about like using a rubric as like a first pass, but also keeping in mind the importance of looking at our collective that we come up with and making sure that it's representative. So we don't want to paint ourselves in a corner of like using a rubric that produces a result that is not as representative as we want it to be. So I'll let Jen add in.
Yes, if the committee would like me to show what I came up with, again, Kathleen supported me with this as well. It is pretty similar to the student representative selection process, meaning there is a rubric and you will score based on certain criteria on a scale. And then the spreadsheet will average those scores out, and which will help me see who is kind of rising to the top. But with the students, for example, sometimes members will score certain students and then we have a couple from the same school or a few from the same ward. And so me and my team will have to look at everybody collectively, like he just said, and kind of see where those decisions need to be made. But so that's all to say that the rubric wouldn't be like you wouldn't just seat the top people on the task force automatically. It would be a way to help make those decisions.
That makes sense to me. I will flag that I did get a call from Representative Boulay earlier today about student applications, because he was like, so what happens if exactly what you described? And I was like, there's some more stuff that goes in. So that's helpful to know. But I think that's it on this. Last call for like if there are any really great thoughts about who else we might want to contact or reach out to. I will say that I did talk to, I think I sent this to River Terrace principal, and she's like she would love to participate in the task force. So I think that's a good get. All right. Seeing none, I think we can move on to our third agenda item. I told you all things were not equal, and really appreciate folks hanging in there, because I know this is supposed to be an hour long meeting. So the on education as a civil right, I think a couple of things. One, we got a request from President Patterson, who's here, to remove the resolution for the agenda from today, but we did still want to check in because we as co-chairs had a meeting with the staff and President Patterson about just like what does it look like to move some of this forward. And so we do want to take some time both to talk through what Representative Best and Johnson Law would like to do with what they brought up on at the working session. How how they see those ideas, if they want those incorporated in, and to start to think about if there are some engagement activities, and we can kind of work through. It's not the same as the high school graduation, but kind of get some ideas so we can then come together and have a action plan. And so, am I missing anything there? Well, God, I hate when my phone rings and I'm on the iPad. Sorry. but those are kind of the big things here. We are still waiting for like the background information for like the what's been done today to date. So it would be good to know when we can receive that.
And real quick, if I may, Representative Thompson. So first and foremost, like I did in my email to you guys requesting that that part be removed, I do want to apologize to the committee. Life is lifing, and this is my last official day at KIP, and it took a lot more closing out than I had anticipated. So I've been very busy over the last couple of weeks to close out from KIP and transitioning from them. So I'm officially not on their payroll or anything of that nature, and I just closed out all those things. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't make up any excuses, but to let you know why you did not receive the items that I had promised by the 18th, so that you would have the week to look at them. And so I'm just here. I want to make sure that I get those things to you guys as soon as possible. I have been working on them so that you guys can have those things. I anticipate within the next couple of days that I will have all the things that I have kind of received to give you guys a working resolution from the things that I've heard. And then you also requested that the meetings that I have had, whether those have been individuals, so to speak, that I give you guys a list of that, is from what I understand that you guys would like to have. So I should have those within the next couple of days and have that for you.
Okay, so that's probably sometime next week, likely after the working session. Is that fair?
That is after the working session. That is fair.
Okay.
And we said the second, that's correct, because I can't have it before. I can actually have it before the working session, but I don't anticipate us. I know I'm not bringing it up in the working session or anything like that. So it can be before the working session, though.
We don't need it before. I'm just, you know,
So it's not a problem.
I'm just level setting, right? Like I don't, I'm always like, what is the reasonable expectation?
Right.
And so let's
Say before, let's say before the working session. So it's the second, I believe. Let's say on the day of the working session.
Okay. And so
Okay.
now I'm going to turn to Representative Best and Johnson Law.
Was it, Representative Best, I don't know if you're.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
there.
here. I wasn't prepared to speak on the matter. But I think I just propose that as an option. I honestly, I don't have too much else to say outside of that. But I provided that.
Representative
Yeah.
Best, if I may ask, when we're talking about you propose as option, and that is the form that you sent to us members concerning some of the things, the one email that had a list of things that you wanted to do. Is that correct, sir?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I received that, and I think the committee probably has it as well, as I saw everybody was listed, but I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what you were referring to. But thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
I was gonna say, I haven't, Representative Best, I don't know if you're traveling, but if the committee would like just to kind of like go through the one pager. Again, it was like it's like a thought document to just kind of figure out, okay, like what is the committee asking? What is the committee requesting? What is the community requesting? And how can we forge a pathway forward so that way we can keep this going? So it's up to you all if you want me to share screen to look at the one pager again. If not, I can just put it in an email because I know we're also over time, so I can also put it in an email.
I think I'm sorry. I'll let Representative Henderson chime in.
Yes. So I
please.
think what I need to know is just kind of as we move forward is Representative Best, you did share the one pager, but you also had kind of a setup for two resolutions or two-part resolution. And I need to know kind of as we move forward, are we pursuing those resolutions? Will those be kind of incorporated into what you bring back, President Patterson? I just want to know, like, what is the work that we need to follow and push through?
Right.
And I appreciate that question. If I may just interject real quick, because I understand it the same way, Representative Henderson, that there was two, because what he was proposing was like there was some editing to the actual resolution that's currently before us that has been edited, but also a resolution that proposes like a commission, so to speak. What I'm saying, currently, unless the committee tells me otherwise, I'm pursuing the resolution aspect of it, unless you guys tell me to also write something that would be about a commission or forming a commission of nature. So I appreciate that question because that would provide me with some clarity as well.
And if I may interject, thank you, President Patterson. The commission was in response to the concern about, okay, high quality education and making sure that that is given utmost authority and that we're not just telling people what is a high quality education, that people are really using an equitable lens when you're talking about what is high quality. Brandon, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Representative Best, I'm sorry, go
it
ahead.
also went to, I know there were some legal concerns. People were wondering, like, well, does this open us up to lawsuits and things of that nature? And so when I looked at that as an option, I was thinking along the lines of, well, what happens if someone has that complaint, or if they feel like they're not being provided with a high quality education, what then? And so my thought process was, well, there could be a commission that oversees this, that makes recommendations on what are the next steps, so that it goes to that commission, so that we know what happens when there is someone who has shared or stated that they're not receiving this high quality education. And I think the other part that I wanted to make sure was that it was a body of people who were fairly representative of all of the stakeholders at play. So you had the parent groups, you had parents, you had staff, you had DCPS central office, you had charter school, like you basically had everybody there, so that it's not just like, you know, this one group of people who are trying to, you know, attack another group. It's a body that is representative, that is trying to look at this problem from a holistic stance that covers every angle. And so the thought process was, if we're saying that part of the challenge is this, the legal component, then I thought that this would be a good way to address that. Once again, as far as our direction, I don't know. I think as a committee, we have to decide which direction that we're going to go in. I think for me, it was just me trying to be proactive with the scenario at the time and figure out what is a possible way forward, since we haven't really quite navigated that way yet.
And
So, go ahead.
if I may, for me, and I appreciate that aspect and the thought process that goes behind it, Representative Best, because we do want to mitigate any type of legal actions that people try to take, so to speak. Whenever you say the word civil rights, they, of course, they go straight to that it's a legal matter and somebody's going to go to court. And we want to try to decrease that kind of action right off the bat. I also, you know, in doing that, and I would love for all of us as even a board, not just this committee, to decide if we do a commission, what authority does it have, and how do you create that type of authority? Because it's one thing to say that we're going to create that, but then there has to be some type of coordination as far as how they have the authority to investigate these things and what can they rectify when someone comes to us. So I appreciate that part, but the way I would see it is that you kind of put it in the language of the resolution that this is something that can be created or proposed, but you know, I wouldn't put them two together or introduce them at the same time, because that's going to take some time, quite some time, you know, to say, okay, we're going to set up this body. What would that look like? Because that's a pretty big endeavor. And I know we would have to bring in so many other people that are not outside of us because of everything that we would have to be coordinated with. That's just my thought on it. But you were about to
So
say
I
something.
think, yeah, I think what I heard, and all of that is good context, but I think what I hear Representative Henderson asking, and I think what I'm also looking for is, when we left the meeting with the staff, what the next step was ideally to be was that you, President Patterson, were going to follow up with Representatives Johnson Law and Best to talk about if we were considering one proposal, or if we were considering two separate proposals, so that we could then say, okay, well, here's what it would take to get to that. And so I think we're asking, and if the answer is, you know, you all want to come back to us and like make that decision. But like, I think we're asking our folks, is this a both? Or is this a, like, are they two separate things? Is it one thing to be incorporated into the resolution? Or is it one thing and not the other? That's, I think, what we are asking, because it was a new idea introduced. And so we're asking like, all right, where does this fit? Is this supplanting the other one? Is it supplementing? Is it like that kind of conversation?
Right.
Not the merits of each one. And if it is helpful for us to debate the merits of each one, we can do that. But the next step was you all to have a conversation about your proposals and to come back to us and say, here's what the committee should start from.
And I have some thoughts on that, but I appreciate the offer to go back and just converse amongst ourselves, the three of us, so to speak, about what that looks like, and then come back to this committee. I think that there's not an August meeting, there's not a July. The next meeting would be in August, to kind of say what came out of that. And community engagement, which is one of the other part to get to, can be conducted over the same time. But I do believe the first thing and foremost, which I will say, even with the proposal on the table, is that we have to have a resolution that has some wording in it that can be shared. And I believe that's a separate thing in itself, whether it has the aspect about the commission in it or not, you know, we can decide that, but there has to be a revised resolution that I have said I will get to you guys, you know, the day before our meeting, our next working meeting, but there has to be something in there. And so I'm going to take that information that I've gotten so far to get that resolution to you guys, the most up-to-date one. And it would have Representative Bess's ideal in there.
Okay, that's helpful, and that helps clarify some things, because then if we know like what we're considering, then we can take the steps to say, okay, here's how we are proposing to get there.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that it leaves it open for his proposal and the editing and everything like that, but they are two separate things at this particular. And so I'm gonna be responsible for the first one.
Well, I think so I think, just to recap, so I think what you are responsible for is the information you've already collected, sharing that back, both the notes and the documentation of like, here's who I've talked to, here's who's given input, here's what they had to say, right? And whatever is the latest and greatest in this resolution language, so we know what we're considering, which and I'm sorry, y'all, Kimba has a cold. He's fine. He's got cough medicine, all the things, but it sounds crazy. If that includes Representative Best's proposal or not, or we should take that separate, is you all are going to have a conversation and make that decision and then come back to us. Because then we can flesh out and saying like, all right, and it might not, but I'm not saying what it has to have, but we just want to know what it is, where we're starting from at this point. Like if it's multiple tracks, if it's one track, if it's, you know.
Okay.
Does that sound right to everybody? Okay. I think that's all the agenda items for our meeting. We do have, like I said, we don't have a July meeting scheduled. We will be doing, just like folks may or may not have seen their email yet about the Student Advisory Committee. Our next step is going to be like the correspondence via email, but also like getting the applications back, and then we can do the same type of review. If we want to schedule a meeting to like talk through some of that, we can. But I think it would behoove us to like get the applications in. But as of right now, our next step for like work of July is like getting the stuff in order to launch, which I'm not sure necessitates a meeting unless like, you know, we see the we see the applications and we're like, you know what, we really need to talk through this. But I don't know if there's anything else that somebody wants to put on the table that will argue for a July meeting. But we do have some good next steps in marching orders, you know, and thanks to folks who have volunteered to reach out, write things down, contact folks, because that's all work and it all keeps us moving, whether we have a meeting or not.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the meeting is necessary as long as we just keep up with our work that we've outlined.
Okay. Thank you guys for, you know, everything today, because this was, like I said, a pretty meaty one. I feel like we're pretty aligned on the work, and we made some good traction, and we'll also be able to share with our colleagues where we are on some really important things. So looking forward to seeing folks at the working session. Stay dry. Hopefully everybody's power's on because it's too hot for it to not be. And this meeting is adjourned at 6:28. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.